introduction. I'm very Thanks a lot for this introduction. I'm very pleased and privileged to be here and present the outcome of my research. And I also want to say it again that this research was founded by Heinrich Böll Stiftung of Germany. Just in case, the research was funded by German foundation. That the main funding sources have come from Germany. So it's titled "Constructing a Nation: Identity Markers of Armenians According to Mshak periodical," published during 1872 till 1892. The controversy about national identity in contemporary Armenian society is becoming more and more intense. Diverse perspectives and opinions exist on this topic. Some are confident that Armenian national identity coincides with religious identity. Some have a strong belief that religion is not the most important part of our national identity. There was recently an interview of Archbishop Barkev Martirosyan. If you all know, maybe he's a primate of Artsakh, of Armenian Apostolic Church, and during his interview he asserted that a real Armenian is only an adherent of Armenian Apostolic Church. And this interview sparked a major debate on the place of religion in the Armenian understanding of national identity. Some sections of Armenian society criticized this religious interpretation of national identity and asked questions about how this relates, for example, to Muslim Armenians, like Hamshensis. And the formation of national identity is a very complex process. In order to acquire a clear understanding of processes discussed in current debates, it's very useful to know how these debates were going on in the second half of the 19th century. And paradoxically, no studies have explored how this 19th century print media in Armenian, not in Armenia because intellectual life was going on in Tbilisi at that period, was shaping the discourse on Armenian identity. And my research seeks to contribute to the field by attempting to fill this research gap. I will analyze the identity markers formulated for Armenians over the 20-year period of 1872 till 1892 by liberal Armenian Mshak periodical, which is translated as Cultivator. It was published in Tiflis, currently Tbilisi. I will discuss following set of questions. What identity markers characterize Armenians according to Mshak? How do they correlate? And in particular, how did Mshak define the function of religion in forming Armenian identity? In considering these three questions, I will then discuss the editor's understanding of Mshak's role in the Armenian society. This will lead to analyzing the Mshak's definition of language and homeland, which appear on its pages as the main identity markers of Armenians. And later on, I'll try to show how Mshak perceived the function of religion, particularly the role of Armenian Apostolic Church in the nation-building processes. So I will skip this scientific scholar part of my research, like theoretical framework and methodology, but I want us all to speak a little bit about the historical framework, because it's very important to understand in what historical period Mshak was giving these thoughts. In the first half of the 19th century, Armenian and Georgian territories became part of Russian Empire, and this played an important role in the further social and economic transformations of this region. The development of capitalism and the peasant reform in Russian Empire, also road construction, developing the communications between different parts of the region, significantly contributed to the abolition of serfdom and the region's economic development. And this rapid economic development caused the formation of an Armenian bourgeoisie, which included traders, factory and landowners. And as Sunni states, the state favored nobility, but the growing economic power of Armenian bourgeoisie was soon reflected in the control of Tiflis municipal politics. The ethnic and social mosaic of Tiflis was the main reason for defining and redefining the boundaries between different ethnicities. And this is something very paradoxical, but Russian colonial dominance and the Russian imperial policy of eliminating the cultural peculiarities of Georgians and Armenians had a positive impact on the formation of national consciousness among both nations. And how Suni notes in his book that the nationalism among the Caucasian Armenians was not a bourgeois creation, but rather an ideology developed and diffused by a Russian educated intelligentsia. And now let's proceed to the main and the most interesting part of my presentation. Mshak's liberal ideology considered journalism, literature, theater, and public lectures as the main tools for the diffusion of education and national progress. Hence, the periodical aimed at exerting an impact, and impact is the word that Mshak was using, on the Armenian community and contributing to the nation's development. Interestingly, Mshak selected merciless self-criticism, and this is also the term that editor and the people who were publishing their articles there were using as a tool to influence the Armenian community, since they were sure that self-criticism was the only sign of nation's ability to change, abandon national flows, and develop. And this is also a direct quote from the article. Published in Mshak. This is, as far as I remember, the first article published in the first issue of the Mshak. So this is the part when they were talking about their mission and what they want to do and why they want to publish the paper. So according to Mshak, the Armenian community was impervious to external influences as a consequence of being encircled by the Chinese wall of prejudice and ancient traditions. Also a direct quote from the Mshak. Abandoning this century-long immovability, and immovability is a translation of ansharjutun, which was also the term and the concept that Mshak was introducing to its readers. Was the only way for development and progress to be achieved. Simply put, Mshak was suggesting that the Armenian community became more flexible and open to change. There were two main ways for Armenians to abandon this century-long immovability, and Mshak was suggesting Armenians either to accept the European education by leaving behind the past and established traditions, or to adopt Armenians' individual peculiarities and their national language and spirit. This is also a quote from Mshak, to the requirements of European education. A nation's vitality was measured by its abandoning this century-long immovability and adopting elements of European education and enlightenment, namely openness to this new civilization and the ability to perceive, comprehend, and apply elements of this civilization was the most important thing for Armenians, as Mshak was saying. If a nation was unable to withstand this new flow and adopt its distinctive characteristics to the requirements of this new civilization, then it would fade away. And that would be the sign that nation had become a dead body. This is also a quote from Mshak, whose existence was ostensible. The publishers of Mshak were confident that Armenians would not give up their national peculiarities and they will not fade away while facing this light and civilization. One of Mshak's goals was to prepare Armenians to deal with this new civilization, and to achieve these aspirations, the Armenian community was required to gain at least a minimum level of literacy. Otherwise, the activities undertaken by Mshak would be unsuccessful, or, as they were stating, a voice in the wilderness. This is also a direct quote from Mshak. This is the main reason why Mshak constantly and insistently advocated for equal educational opportunities, emphasizing the unacceptability of gender discrimination. And interestingly, in this period, Mshak, they were publishing a lot of articles about the emancipation of women and how the women can have a positive impact in their family while teaching the national spirit to their children and their husbands as well. An analysis of articles published in Mshak show that Armenian society of that time had a dualist attitude towards the education and European education in particular. On the one hand, individuals representing different strata of Armenian society strove to provide education for their children, while on the other, that same society was unwilling to afford the education among young people and to give them an opportunity to implement the knowledge that they have gained. And as far as you see, not a lot has changed until now. Sometimes now as well, Armenians are sending their children to Europe, different institutions to learn and get the best education available. But when they're coming back, they are getting in front of this wall of old thinking, and the people with this old understanding not often give the young people an opportunity to implement the knowledge that they have gained. So our society has not changed a lot since Mshak was publishing its articles. And as already I have stated, Mshak had aimed to prepare the community to adopt the elements of European Enlightenment while simultaneously preserve essential national features. The initial phase required a definition of who is an Armenian. Only after answering to this question, Mshak and Armenian society could develop a mechanism to correlate the Armenian nation with the outside world. And according to Mshak, a nation rests upon relationship mediated by tribe or kinship. It is, in Armenian they said tser. This is the kind of term that they were using. Language and tser. This is also language and homeland. And paradoxically, this issue of kinship is almost neglected, apart from appearing on the list of identity markers, in contrast to which the function of language and homeland were accorded significant emphasis. So let's talk now about language. A great number of articles published in the Mshak were devoted to answering the question, which elements constitute the identity of the Armenian? And according to Anthony Smith, which is one of the most significant scholars on the field of nationalism, so Smith states that national identity is fundamentally multidimensional and can never be reduced to a single element. We can deduce from the analysis of articles published before mid-80s that language was the most important and most profoundly discussed element of Armenian identity during that period. And only after mid-80s we can observe a discussion of the interrelation of language and other identity markers. A discussion of the attitude towards an Armenian language in Armenian society, in particular among the Armenians of Tbilisi, will help us understand the driving forces behind the Mshak's liberal ideas on national identity. A detailed analysis of the articles published in Mshak reveals that most Armenians of the time were unconcerned with preserving their native language. Both the representatives of upper class as well as the ordinary people had a scornful attitude toward their language. This suggests that the vast majority of individuals representing upper-class Armenian society did not know their language properly and avoided using Armenian in everyday life. Ordinary people were characterized by ignorance and bigotry. To a great extent, they didn't know Armenian, and in this case, this is the classical Armenian of the church liturgy, but yet they prayed fervently in church. This is also a direct quote from Mshak. Moreover, in the articles published in 1877 with the title Everything for Money, they also declared that Armenians viewed their native language from the viewpoint of the trader. That is to say, they perceived it as an obsolete and equated it with broken plate or a well-worn dress. Direct quote from Mshak. We needed to, of course, limit the degree of generalization in the treating Armenians' negative attitude toward their language, but in all likelihood, this attitude was one of the main reasons, if not the main one, that forced the Mshak to discuss the function of language as an identity marker. So the Mshak's understanding of the notion of nation and the function of language in a given nation was not primitive, but let's say straightforward. The publishers compared nations with individuals and stated that as a society is comprised of different individuals, humanity consists of nations. Direct quote from Mshak. And language is one of the main characteristics and peculiarities of a nation. Likewise, in the article published in 1880 entitled Armenians and Georgians, the author argued that language is a nation's only certain and lifelong foundation. Direct quote from Mshak. And unsurprisingly, Mshak liberalism considered language not only as an essential factor of Armenian identity, without which Armenians would never be complete, perfect, but also declared that a nation which does not retain its native language and it surrendered to the power of national evolution. The Mshak regarded language as a tool of diffusion of education, a civilizing tool that would develop the moral and intellectual characteristics of national lives. These are the direct quotes from the articles published in the periodical. This tool should be used to adopt the European thoughts. And publishers consider national education in Armenian as the only tool to achieve progress and facilitate adopting elements of European enlightenment. And now let's discuss the most controversial part of Mshak's ideas, language versus religion. The relation or relevance of language to religion as an identity marker is a thing that was widely discussed in Mshak. The Mshak widely discussed this question of religion and language as the elements constituting national identity. Should Armenians consider religion as the facet of Armenian national identity? Should it be the basis to determine which Armenians belong to their national community and which do not? Does language oppose religion? Which is superior as a means of identifying members of the Armenian nation? Is it language or religion that functions more effectively in unifying the different strata of Armenian society? These are the sort of questions that publishers subjected to profound discussion and analysis. Predictably, the Mshak's liberal ideology considered religion inferior to language from this perspective. Others may contend that there were almost no social ties between the different social classes of the Armenian nation, and each class was developing separately, and state that only tool connecting them was religion. But Mshak harshly criticized this approach and actively advocated for education in Armenian as the main link between different strata of the Armenian nation. Hence, the Mshak criticized any approach on Armenians' part to identify nation with religion. From this viewpoint, Armenians of the time did not consider the nation as an organic historical entity, but rather equated it with the religion, or rather to say with church. In one article, Mshak, one of the authors of Mshak, argued that there existed a false stereotypical account of Armenian history, that Armenians were convinced to accept that all the battles that they had fought, all the bloodshed that had been devoted not to the idea of protecting national sovereignty and trampled right, but because of the religion. This is to say, to protect the idea of God, to be a soldier of the Bible. This is direct quote from the Mshak. Widespread illusion existed among Armenians that the nation rested purely upon religion in that time. In contrast to that established perspective, the Mshak asserted that nationality rests on language. Obviously, Mshak's viewpoint of seeing a unifying function in language, which can be defined as a comprehensive approach, might have granted the Armenian nation enormous advantages rather than perspectives emphasizing only the role of religion. For Mshak's liberal ideology, the glaring flaw of Armenians of that time was their refusal to recognize as members of their national community compatriots who adhered other religions like Catholic Armenians, Protestant Armenians, Orthodox Armenians, and also Muslim Armenians too. The Armenians of that time considered themselves the Armenians of that time were thinking that he or she belonged to the Armenian only if they belonged to the Armenian Apostolic Church. So the people who do not belong to Armenian Apostolic Church, like Protestant Armenians, they were not considered as Armenians. They were the others, not the members of their nation. And Mshak had a negative attitude towards this exclusivist perspective, arguing that Armenians were not a nation, but a mere sect, because they would consider someone as a member of their nation based on religion, even though he did not speak Armenian or disdain it. This was the direct quote from Mshak. According to the Mshak, in the contemporary world, religion is considered to occupy a secondary position with regard to national matters, and religion and beliefs are purely personal matters that cannot serve as characteristics determining affiliation to a nation. And as we have already seen, Mshak liberal ideology did not consider religion as an important identity marker of Armenian national identity, but it did not deny the positive impact that organized religion could have on a nation, with the proviso that the church should cease insisting that adherence to a particular religious confession was the only basis for including or excluding members of the Armenian nation. The Mshak considered itself the adversary of ignorance, hence the enemy of the ignorant clergy as well. So the publishers were sure that through organized religion, the clergy might exert a civilizing impact on the ignorant masses, which is why Mshak emphasized the importance of clerical education while referring to the positive impact organized religion could have on a nation. According to Mshak's viewpoint, people lacking a formation through organized religion would only amount to educated scoundrels and thieves, enlightened exploiters. And now let's talk about Homeland as one of the main identity markers of Armenians. As Anthony Smith lists a historical territory or homeland among the other fundamental features of national identity. The link between nation and the homeland is real and physical. Homeland has a unique significance for a given nation in a view of the fact that it is not a mere territory, but a repository of historic memories and associations, the place where their saints, heroes have lived, worked, prayed, and fought. Mshak liberal ideology outlines a homeland among other Armenian identity markers. In articles published before the mid-1880s, the notion of homeland appears in the context of the discussion of emigration issues. Only thereafter do we observe the accumulation of a complete body of facts designated the homeland as one of the main pillars of the nation. At the same time, though providing tangible ground for considering the homeland one of the bases of the nation, those articles leave a room of ambiguity as well. Therefore, there is a contradiction concerning the correlation of the notions of homeland and language as identity markers of Armenians. We can rightly assert that it is extremely difficult, if not impossible, to say which one of these identity markers Mshak was considering at the apex of the hierarchy of identity markers. The main reason for this confusion was the inconsistency of the authors writing on national identity issues. In this regard, I would like to concentrate on 3 articles entitled Elementary Thoughts, Տարական մտքեր, Native Language, Mareni Lezu, and There is no End, Վերջ չկա. All 3 articles were written by the same author, identified by the initials GA, which I consider is Grigor Artsruni, and published respectively on June 25, October 11, and September 19 of the year 1880. In the article Elementary Thoughts, the author stated that if a nation retains the language but loses the homeland, it should found a new homeland, otherwise the language will be lost as well. If the nation has a homeland but has lost its language, the nation can still exist, though it will transform into a new nation. Meanwhile, in the article Native Language, the author declares that the nation retains its nationality by sustaining in use its native language, even if it changes its religion and homeland. In the 3rd article, entitled There is no End, he declares that if a nation loses its homeland and scatters all over the world, it is not a nation anymore. These 3 quotes are clear illustration of ambiguous system of identity markers of Mshak's liberalism, we can say, if we can say that this was the liberalism. So these are the controversy that Mshak's liberalism was giving to Armenian society at that time. The Mshak was unable or unwilling to tolerate emigration from the homeland. Its authors frequently disapproved of it and criticized. So this is here I'll say a direct quote from Mshak. The illusion of those who believe they can retain their nation by maintaining their church and language without homeland. So so this was the illusion for Mshak. This was the illusion that people can maintain their church, their nationality by maintaining church and language. I mean, what they mean if you lose your homeland and you have your language and church, you are not a nation anymore. So homeland is the most important thing for a nation. Notably, they criticized the Western idea that Armenians could establish a new national center in any country they settled in. Suffice it to say, Mshak liberals declared that the people who justify and tolerate exodus from the homeland cannot exist as a nation. So, and now I'll give some concluding remarks, just to give my colleagues opportunity to talk about their interesting presentations as well. Nation building and Armenian identity markers expounded in the articles published in the Tbilisi-based periodical over a 20-year period and revealed vigorous attempts of Mshak to redefine Armenian national identity. The study also revealed that Mshak's advocacy of abandoning rigorous, uncompromising adherence to obsolete prejudice and ancient traditions was something very much criticized by them. In contrast, their writers proposed to adopt the elements of European Enlightenment, but at the same time to preserve essential national characteristics. And this is the thing that we need to consider: which are the essential national characteristics, what we can yield, but what we need to preserve in order to be able to be called a nation. From a theoretical, we don't need these theoretical things. This was for yesterday's presentation. Additionally, Mshak conducted a profound examination of popular notions that being Christian, in particular adhering to Armenian Apostolic Church, was one of the core elements of Armenian identity. However, its liberalism militated against any approach to a nation with religion. This is the thing that we can certainly say. This is the thing that was not ambiguous, as like the issues with Homeland. And its writers rejected the perspective that religion constituted the main unifying force for Armenians, contrasting this with the unifying function of language. So these are the questions that until now are open. Until now we don't have the answers about who are we, what do we want, what is essential for us, do we need a homeland, can we live in diaspora? All these are questions that are still open, and unfortunately I don't know about how they are being discussed in diaspora, but in Armenia people are not, and intellectuals are not so much concerned with these things. I don't know why. I mean, of course we can assume because of different economic and other difficulties that they are facing. They have no time to think about this. But however, these are very, very important things to think, to consider, and to try to answer to these questions. So thank you very much for your time. And if you have any questions, I'm ready.
I don't think we're